Hi, I'm Archie Tillett from Tillett Racing Seats, and today we're going to be fitting this seat to this kart. We're going to be showing how drivers to fit the seat correctly and some of the questions that we commonly get. So before we get the seat installed, we're going to talk about the Tboard. Basically, this is a good bit of kit that you use to fit the seat. Essentially what it does is it's going to keep the seat flush with the tubes. You don't have to use this, you can use sometimes just a plank of wood. Essentially what you want is something that's just hard and not going to have any sort of play which is rigid. By doing that, the seat's going to stay in consistent spots all the time, especially once you put the lead in the seat. It will just make your life 10 times easier. So we're here with Steve Lamyman, the Pier 5 mechanic. He will be just showing us how we're going to fit the seat today.
So you obviously start at the top,
yeah,
and make sure that the seat obviously fits in. You normally have to bend them.
Yeah. So it's obviously really important that the seat stay is flush with the seat, and if you don't bend it into the correct angle, what will end up happening is you put too much stress in one particular area. This is a common mistake, and then you can also start to see sort of stress fractures appear around that sort of bolting position. So it's really key that you obviously bend the metal into the correct position, otherwise you're going to massively reduce the life of the seat.
So now the engine side seat looks bent. The middle of the seat is down the middle of the cart. And then you have to do the same the other side.
Yeah.
So if you're fitting the seat for a smaller driver, you measure the narrowest point. You have to bend this seat stay in. Obviously just with some kind of bar or an axe or with a rag around it to the measurement, and then do your top seat lugs again.
The best way to basically raise the seat is, to be honest, just using a sprocket. So obviously the board is flush with the bottom of the frame. Just by putting one sprocket in, you'll raise it by 5mm. That's typically what you want to do for smaller drivers, but then obviously you do the opposite for taller drivers. So like myself, I'm about 6 foot. I want to get below the frame, otherwise I put too much weight on the tyres. So this is an example with a smaller driver. So Pod here has just put 4 or 5 sprockets underneath the seat. So now it's sitting around about 20mm above the frame. Sprocket's a universal way to do it. Put one above or multiple for small drivers, and then you want to fit maximum 5mm below the frame for taller drivers. You know, if a driver's already got his sort of unique way of doing it, to be honest, your reference point is if you're going from the same seat to same seat again, the seats are identical, so it shouldn't make too much of a difference. So if you're obviously measuring from whatever distance from the back to the spine, it's fine. It's only when you start then changing seat sizes, just because the cavities might change, very small amounts, but it's enough that you might notice the difference. So that's why we normally recommend just sit off to the left of the spine. That's normally the most consistent place because the cavity should be always about the same. So depending on whether you're going to be changing seat sizes, let's say you're going from a small T11 to a Manetti T11, usually it's around about 140 from the back axle. You often want to try and get the seat as far back as possible, just because you've got more play in the front of the car. So when you drill the seat, we normally recommend to try and keep around about 15mm from the sort of the edge of the seat. If you do go too close, you will start putting more stress around the sort of the edge of the seat, which we don't really normally recommend. You'll start messing with the rigidity of the seat. So yeah, 15mm from the edge is normally about what we recommend. Yeah, so you see, we've put a 51mm washer just behind the seat. That's to comply with sort of worldwide regulations. So what happens is that if you use a metal washer or one that's too small, see when you twist the seat or that gets put under pressure, it will put basically excess pressure onto the seat and it'll crack it, or could actually penetrate through the seat. So the bigger the surface area, the better, obviously, to spread the load. So when you're fitting the top half of the seat, again, you want to pack it out with the optimum amount of washers. If you find yourself that you haven't got enough, or you think that, oh, it's right, I'll just throw it in without bending the seat stays, what you end up doing is you put excess pressure onto the seat. So if you've noticed that it starts to burst on the back, have a look. If you're not running enough washers, or you basically just fit it and pushed it into place, it will burst the back.
So if you do all that correct at the top,
yep,
the gap down the middle, now if you look from the back, you're completely central, so that when you fit the bottom, the top's not stressed. if you use a steel ruler, level on the seat, down to the bracket on the frame, you get a rough idea of the angles of both of them, so as how far you need to bend this, so it's at the same angle as the seat. What you need to do is make sure that that angle is correct.
Yep.
And that angle is correct.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, so obviously if you've done the prep properly, the seat stay should be perfectly in line with the seat. If it's not, you'll start noticing some stress fractures going around obviously the washer. Obviously not ideal, you'll start cracking the seat, and obviously the driver's jumping in and out and puts even more stress onto that point, so get that right and the seat will last longer. Just like the fixed seat stays, with the additional ones you want to bend the top half of it so it matches the profile of the seat exactly. Otherwise you'll see this exactly the same sort of stress cracking as you would anywhere else, which starts showing whiting around the bolts, so obviously you want to try and avoid that. Another good point to always remember and look out for is that when you're fitting the seat, make sure it's not interfering with any of the framework in the kart. As you can see here, this is sort of the minimum distance that we would recommend. Also, you have to keep in mind that when you're going over bumps and stressing the seat, it will flex. So having this sort of gap is sort of the minimum amount we would say. So now we're going to be talking about lead placement. It's a big issue that we see with the seats. You got a lot of drivers who will end up having just lead bolted here, there and everywhere on the seat, and it ends up causing a lot of stress fractures and ends up breaking the seats a lot of the time. So it's really essential that you put the lead on properly, basically. That's a combination between using nylon washers, properly spacing it, perhaps even shaping the lead sometimes if you're going to put it into quite tight spaces. There's numerous things that you can do. Lead's now in. It forms perfectly with the shape of the seat, so it's not putting any stress or unnecessary stress anywhere else. We've spaced it away from the seat as well with some nylon spacers, so it's basically free hanging in a sense. So again, that's the perfect way to fit the lead to the seat. Seat's in, ready to go on track now, so the only last thing we would recommend doing is drilling a few holes in the bottom so when it rains, water's way to get out basically.